A few years back, my wife and I went to a fancy jewelry store in Thailand and bought lots of gold. Now it's a little strange because I've never been married. So who was this woman pretending to be my wife? Why was I buying her gold? And why am I telling you this story? Too many questions, right? Well, I have another one. Would you like to find what works for you? Because by the end of this talk, I'm going to give you all the tools, the techniques, and the secrets that will surely, positively, and most definitely help you fail. Yes, I will help you fail like you've never failed before. My name is Imran Shamsi, and it almost sounds like Imran Hashmi. Shamsi, Hashmi, Hashmi, Shamsi. You can guess that college wasn't easy. So yeah, I'm a college dropout turned creative director, turned corporate slave, turned entrepreneur. But to be accurate, I'm a story of failures. I failed my graduation, I failed my film school interview, I failed as a Bollywood reporter, I failed as a reality TV producer, I failed as a corporate slave, and even now I continue to fail every single day. Maybe failure has a thing for me, or maybe I have a thing for failure. But why should you listen to somebody who's failed so much? It's like how they say, if you've had a shitty life, look at somebody whose life is shittier. I believe that failure should either make you learn or make you laugh, but never make you stop. I wasn't always this thick-skinned about failing. I remember I was terrified of it when I was in school. My father had come to me on the day of the results of my board exams. I had not studied at all. And he comes to me and says, "It's okay if you fail, beta, just don't do anything stupid." And I shot back saying, "I'm not going to fail." And my mother was right next to me and she said, "Fail to beta tum pakka ho rahe ho, bas kuch kar mat lena." So I wasn't going to kill myself, but this cute little conversation with my parents helped me get comfortable with the idea of failing. Now fast forward to more than a decade later, I found myself sucked into this well-paying, prestigious, but unsatisfying job as the head of content at the Walt Disney Company. Now you know you're screwed when you're the saddest person at the happiest place in the world. The problem was not Disney or my colleagues. The problem was me. I was bitter and resentful about stagnating and not being able to satisfy my creative urges. So I decided to do the most cliched thing that everybody thinks about, but not many people do: introspection. I took a break and shifted the focus back to myself and started noting down all the things that I'd really wanted to do, the things I was good at, and the things that truly made me happy. In short, I had to do what they do right after graduating from IIT: find my passion. This cliche scared me much more than my biggest fear, that is public speaking. On that note, here's a fun fact. This is my first public talk ever, and the way it's making me feel from inside, it may as well be the last. Nervous jokes apart, I thought that finding my one true passion, or the one thing that I was born to do, or my sole purpose in the world, was kind of pointless for me. There was not one definite passion that I could commit to, and there were too many things that I love to do, like writing, photography, cinematography, video editing, graphic design, web design, branding, and whatnot. But I realized that I'm not a good enough writer to be just a writer. I'm not a good enough director to be just a director. And I'm not a good enough photographer to be just a photographer. I could relate hard with the words of Robert Downey Jr. when he says, "I know who I am. I'm just a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude." But I did not want to be anybody else. So instead of tying myself down to one passion, I decided to grow all of them together. I realized that being a generalist makes me much happier than being a specialist. Also, this act of freely dabbling into many things without the fear of success or failure kind of worked for me. And it filled me up with excitement and hope. So after finding what works for me, I thought of applying my learnings for others. So I decided to quit my job at the House of Mouse and founded my own video agency called What Works. I chose this name from over 200 options. The power, practicality, and the sense of purpose these two simple words had was phenomenal. What works? That's all you need to think about. While I love the name, I also thought that many people will find it cocky because nobody wants to work with a bunch of know-it-alls. And frankly, in the creative industry, no one truly knows what works. So instead of claiming to know what works, we decided to focus on doing whatever it takes to find what works. And to do that, you don't have to be a genius, a maverick, or even an intellectual. You need just one thing: shoes. Yes, shoes. Imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes. Think from the client's point of view. For a moment, imagine that your client's business is your business, Every penny that they're spending is coming from your pocket, and all their dreams are yours too. Too many times we get blinded by our selfish desires and we fail to see the needs of the people we are serving, the ones who put their faith in us and the ones who are giving us the money. So how do we fit into their shoes and find what works for them? Simple. Take a hat, any hat, just put it on their head. Let it absorb all their thoughts and then put it back on your head. I'm kidding, obviously. There's no magic trick to this. There's a simple 3-step framework that will help you find what works. First, empathy. Now, it's not easy to have empathy when all we think about is ourselves. So as a rule, even before thinking about the ideas, we deploy a borderline stalker level empathy for our clients' businesses. That means we go beyond the brief, beyond the website, and start looking for conversations about them on social media. We speak to people offline, read news articles about them to understand what really matters for them. And once we do this, not only do we get relevant ideas, we also gain the client's trust because they know we care. My first lesson in empathy was when I was 12 years old. I remember I'd gone grocery shopping with my mother and we were both coming back on a cycle rickshaw with a huge sack of rice. Now, as tradition with mothers while shopping goes, she had to get off to get more stuff. And when she did not return, I went to look for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. So I came back only to see that the rickshawala, the rickshaw, and the sack of rice had all vanished. So I went back home only to find my mother worried sick because she thought that she lost me. And I started crying to her and I said, "I'm so sorry, I was stupid and the rickshawala stole all our rice." Her response baffled me. She said, "Koi baat nahi beta, rickshawala bhi to gareeb hi hoga. Maybe he needed the rice much more than we did." At that moment, I couldn't understand how could she have so much empathy for a thief. But later, I understood that when you put yourself in somebody else's position, it becomes easy to deal with the situation. Now, how does one build empathy? Simple. By listening. Listen twice as much as you speak. There's a reason why we have one mouth and 2 ears. The second step is experimentation. Now, to find what works, we need to find what doesn't work. Experimentation and having a scientific approach towards creativity helps with that. Knowing that most of the approaches that we try will fail takes the sting of failure, and it gives us more courage to keep going. I remember there was a time when most of the films that were being promoted were promoted using item numbers. Around the same time, we, in collaboration with Yashraj Films, came up with a very unique campaign strategy for Shah Rukh Khan's fan. Instead of shooting cliched promos with the actors of the film, we decided to make a series of documentaries featuring the real-life fans of the superstar. Now, it was a little stupid because we are promoting a Shah Rukh Khan film without Shah Rukh Khan. But then, as Shah Rukh himself says, it's not special to be special, it's special to be ordinary. We focused on these ordinary people and their extraordinary stories and made them the heroes of our content. No wonder the campaign trended worldwide 3 months before the release of the film. So why is it that people do not experiment? The answer lies in their DNA. It may sound a little odd, but it's true. Human beings are hardwired to look for potential problems and dangers. Back in the prehistoric times, it was the fear of wild animals hunting us down, which has now evolved to whether my post will get enough likes or not, or is my art good enough, or what will people think about me. Firstly, nobody cares. Secondly, criticism and failure will not kill you. The final step is persistence. In a superhero universe, we'd not be like Superman or Batman. We'd be like Daredevil. No matter how hard we get hit, we get up. We always get up. Getting up after a hard fall is a victory in itself. We focus on such small wins to keep us going. If you put brick after brick after brick after brick, eventually you'll have a whole building. Too many people want to see the building right after placing the first brick, and that is why they give up. But sometimes you don't have an option but to persist. Remember the story I told you about my wife in Thailand? Here's what actually happened. We were shooting a web series, and by the time we landed in Thailand, demonetization had already happened. So all our currency notes immediately became invalid. And to run the shoot, to run the set, we needed a lot of cash. The only way we could figure cash at that moment was buying stuff from our credit cards and selling it, just so we could get enough cash to make the shoot happen. Now, to do that, I had to pretend to be the loving husband to my line producer. And we bought jewelry across the country. And only then could we arrange for cash and resume the shoot. This lesson taught me that sometimes you have to forget everything else and do whatever works. So how will finding what works benefit you? Society has trained us to focus on the negative. Consider the news. all they do is sensationalize stuff that's sad and depressing, like wars, murders, accidents, natural disasters, and whatnot. How many times do you see them talking about how many roads were built, or how many lives were saved, or how many schools were inaugurated? Our mind focuses on the negative, and that's what they exploit. But if we shift our focus to what works, we will come closer to finding solutions instead of worrying about the problems. For example, what if there are few things about your partner that you don't like, but there are too many things that you love about them? Now, if you focus on what you don't like, will it be a happy relationship? What will happen if you focus on what you love about them? How will the relationship change then? Focus on what's broken and it can consume you. Focus on what works and you begin to build solutions. So take a notebook and start writing down what works for you. It can be your attitude, your ability, your personality, your education, your wisdom, your sense of humor, your boldness, your ambition, your drive, your empathy, your discipline. It could be anything that works for you. Double down on that instead of dwelling on your weaknesses. As Zig Ziglar says, you can get whatever you want if you help enough people get what they want. So I urge you to try this technique to find what works for your audiences, clients, friends, family, and followers. And when you finally feel that you're successful, find something to fail at. Failure humbles you and builds you up for bigger successes, because every failure is a step closer to finding what works. Thank you.